Okay, I think we're live. Hello, everybody. This is the third and final installment of the Scratch 3.0 webinar series.
Yay.
Thanks for tuning in. It's 6 p.m. in Boston. Regardless of what time it is, where you are, whether it's late or early, thanks for tuning in. So for this episode, we have another sort of like group of Scratch team folks. So we'll go around and do some quick introductions. My name is Chantika Fernando. I work on outreach and communications for the Scratch team, and I'm here with.
My name is Carmelo, and I'm a student in the left kindergarten, and also like part of the Scratch team. And one of my favorite things in the world is like helping educators, kind of like understanding and putting in practice the ideas behind Scratch. So the philosophical, pedagogical ideas that make Scratch a wonderful learning environment and community.
Hi, everyone. My name is Me, and I help out with communications for Scratch and just telling the story of Scratch. So if you follow us on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, we've probably interacted before.
My name is Natalie, and I've been involved in the Scratch project from the beginning, helping to think out what's there, and most recently thinking a lot about the educational resources, and I'm excited to share and talk about them with you today.
So there's a slight delay or you guys were breaking up a little bit, but hopefully folks are hearing us okay. And that was the Media Lab network might be a little funky. So apologies in advance if there's any weirdness that people are experiencing. Let us chat if there are any issues with the network that you're noticing. But so to get started, I think the reason we wanted to host these webinars was because, as many of you know, the launch of Scratch 3.0 is right around the corner. It's January 2nd. And a few months ago, we released the beta version of the editor that you're able to try at beta.scratch.mit.edu. But we want to use these webinars as a chance to walk folks through the editor, talk about some of the things that we've been working on, some of the ideas behind Scratch 3.0, and also use it as a time to answer any questions that people have, because we know there's lots of questions. And so the way we want to use this time was to I'll start by giving sort of a quick overview of what Scratch 3.0 is. Carmelo and I will work on a little project in the editor, walk you through some of the things that are new. I'll talk about the extensions library, which is one of the newer features in Scratch 3.0. And then I'll pass it on to Natalie, who will share a bit more about what we're doing with resources around Scratch 3.0. We'll talk about, and then we'll jump into questions and try and save lots of time just to answer all the questions that folks might have who are listening. So Scratch 3.0, we've been working on it for a few years now. It's been a little over 5 years, I think, since we launched the last version of Scratch, which was Scratch 2.0. And this new version of Scratch is a complete rewrite of the code base, and it moves us off of Flash. And it's been designed to basically work on a wider range of modern devices. So thinking about supporting touch devices like tablets and being able to play on phones is a big part of this redesign. The other thing we're thinking about, or that we've been thinking about as we created this new version of Scratch, is how we can expand the types of things you can create with Scratch, which is a lot about what the extension library is about, and then also how we can better support people getting started with Scratch. And so that's a lot of the work we've been doing around more resources. And is there something else that I wanted to say about? Oh, and so another thing to note with this new version, it's mostly focused on updates to the editor. And when we launch, it'll still be connected to the community, but you won't see very many changes to the community. You also won't see changes You know, a lot of folks have been asking us about teacher accounts. You won't see changes with this launch to teacher accounts, but that is something we continue to think about. We've been having lots of discussions around different platforms we can adopt and ways we can improve that experience. And we hope to work on a lot of that stuff after the launch next year.
So basically, like from January 2nd, if we go on the Scratch website and we create a project, the normal like the editor that we'll see will be the new Scratch 3.0.
Yeah, which is what we're going to go look at right now.
So excited about it.
All right. So I'm going to present. Let's see. Okay. And actually, one thing before, so that's, you're seeing the editor now, hopefully. But before we jump into the editor, let's just share a couple of quick links. So we'll be looking at questions or taking questions both in the chat if you're asking questions there, you're participating there. We'll be pulling questions from there, but you can also go on Twitter and use the hashtag Scratch3webinar. Or you can also use a platform called Poll Everywhere or Everywhere.
I think everywhere. Yeah, it's pollev.com.
Pollev.com/Scratch team. And you could use any one of those, whatever feels best for you to ask questions. We'll be looking at all of them and pulling from them towards the end of the webinar.
That's great. Before we jump into making a project that I'm very excited to do, I just want to acknowledge I was like looking at the chat, and one thing that many people are worried about is like, what happens to my projects, right? I think this is something that we want to reassure everyone on the Scratch community. All your projects, all the comments that you have on your projects, or everything that is related to your community aspect of Scratch will stay there.
Yes.
The only thing that's changed is that you're gonna have a new shiny interface to make Scratch project, but everything that is related to your past projects and your past kind of like history and identity in the Scratch community will be there.
Yes. Rest assured. And actually, I'll just show you quickly before we dive. When you go to beta.scratch.mit.edu, the first thing you'll see is this modal, and you have some options down here. You can say not now. You can try it and go into the editor, or if you click on View 2.0 project, you will be able to load. You can use the URL to one of your existing Scratch 2.0 projects and load it into the editor and see how it plays in the beta. There may still be some bugs that we're working out over the next few months, but for the most part, you should see that your projects will work in the beta version. Okay, so should we try making a project?
Let's make a project.
All right, cool.
Yes.
I'll let you start. We're gonna work on this together, but.
Okay, so I'm gonna start, and the first thing I'm gonna do, even though I really love the Scratch Cat, I'm gonna delete it.
The Scratch Cat. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So because I want to try a new sprite. So and then there's a new way to delete like sprites. It's just like clicking on this little X here, and Scratch Cat is gone. Okay. Right. So if I click here, I can have like different ways to kind of select a new sprite. I can choose a sprite from the library. I can paint a new sprite in the editor. I can have a surprise, and I'm looking forward to try that, a surprise sprite. And I can also like upload an image from my computer. Now I'm gonna choose a sprite from the library, so we have an opportunity to see which sprites are there. And you might recognize some of the classic sprites of Scratch 2.0. I don't know, like ballerina, the ball, balloon. Also, the beetle are all kind of like classics of Scratch. But you might also recognize some new ones, like the bear. I think it's a new one. I love this new butterfly. And as you can see, also like the new interface will allow you to see all the different costumes that the sprites have. I really love
Which is, it's really cool.
Yeah, and also I'm gonna search for a sprite. I know we have a bunch of cool dinosaurs. So let me see, like, there we go, dino.
I like that green one.
The green one?
Yeah, but you should choose.
If you like this one, I'll choose this one.
All right.
And there we go. and we have a new sprite. And now I want to
Cute.
write some code, right?
Mhm.
So as you can see on the left now, we have all the blocks that used to be in Scratch 2.0 will be also in Scratch 3. But the way in which you browse them is changed, right? You can like scroll all of them. And I love this thing because I don't need to remember which category or which color was a block. I can just like go and find it. But of course, I can also jump into different categories. So let me just like play around with costumes. So
And one thing about the new blocks UI is a lot of it, the blocks are slightly bigger, and that scrolling palette is designed again with touch interfaces in mind to make that experience a lot nicer.
yeah.
So it works great on a tablet.
Yeah, and still I can like make it like bigger and smaller, like using the zoom feature. So one of my favorite use, especially when you have a workshop, you know, like other people are looking at your code. So cool. So every time I
Cute.
click,
Oh,
oh
gosh,
wow,
cute.
look at this. And let me kind of like activate this when it's clicked. So now I can just like click on the dinosaur and it's moving.
There we go. All right. Is it my turn?
Yeah,
Should I
it's
jump
your
in?
turn.
All right. I think I want to add. I think I love it sort of changing costume, but I want to add a little sound. And so I can go into the sounds tab. And again, similar to adding a sprite, I have this icon down at the bottom that gives me some options. I can choose a sound from our library. I can record a sound. I can get a surprise sound, and I can upload a sound from my own computer. But I think I am going to record a sound.
Yes.
And so the sound recorder, sound editor is another area where we've made lots of improvements just to make the experience of recording and editing sound a lot nicer, but also make, we've added some playful things like filters to allow you to play with sound in a fun way. So maybe you can help me. I don't know if the dinosaur should say, I think the last time we made the dinosaur roar, maybe the dinosaur, what if it like meows?
Oh my God, this is so fun. Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it together.
It should like meow in a kind of like
a loud roar meow.
Okay.
Ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Meow.
Meow. Cool. All right, let's play that.
Okay, 3. Meow.
Okay, so I'm gonna edit out the beginning because I don't want that. I can easily just trim and save. Let's listen to that one more time.
Meow.
Not bad.
Sounds good.
I think we can add like an echo.
Meow.
It's a little bit more intimidating.
And profound.
We also have this robot effect. I wonder what that'll.
Try.
That's kind of weird. I like it. Is that good?
I don't know. It's kind of weird, but
let's leave it. I like it.
Okay, let's leave it.
Okay, so now I'm gonna just call that sound meow here, and I'll go back to the code and go into the sounds category, pull out the play sound, and change that to meow. And if I click on that, okay,
it's
scary.
Really weird.
That's really weird and scary. I'm just gonna connect that to the stack that you have. Maybe actually I might have it go before it changes costume. All right.
Okay.
Cool. I think it's your turn.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah,
So I was wondering where the dinosaur is. Like it's now on a white kind of.
It's nowhere.
It's nowhere.
It's in limbo.
Right. So let's choose a backdrop, and in a similar way, you can just like browse the library. We can paint one, get a surprise, or upload a backdrop. I'm gonna choose a backdrop from the library because, again, I wanna see which are the ones that are classic and the backdrop are still there, and which are the new ones. For example, I don't know. Wow, the galaxy is very intriguing. Like also the space one.
Yeah.
I really love this type
Dinosaurs
of art.
in space.
Dinosaurs in space. Here
Nice.
it is. Look at
that
this.
Seems appropriate.
Yes, on this planet in which dinosaurs still live.
And say meow.
And say meow, yes.
They've evolved in different ways.
Yeah. Exactly. There
That
is
sounds
also
right,
the
yes.
echo of the
Yeah.
space. So what are we gonna do next?
All right. So now that we have a dinosaur meowing in space, I think why don't we look at the extensions? So I mentioned earlier that one of the things we've thought about with Scratch 3.0 is expanding the types of things you can create. And so we have this new extensions library. If you go down to the bottom left of the screen, there's this little blue icon. And if you click on that, it pops up what we're calling the extensions library. And in here, you'll find sets of blocks that you can add that basically allow you to do new types of things with Scratch. And so first, you'll actually notice there's some things that used to be just in the default editor that we've moved into the extensions library. So if you're looking for the pen blocks, they're now in the extensions library as an extension. Video sensing is also here. And we've moved some of the music blocks in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what's exciting is we've also added all sorts of new things. So there's software extensions that connect to interesting software services like text-to-speech. There's a translate extension. And then we also have some new hardware extensions that connect to physical devices like the Microbit, the Lego Mindstorms EV3, the Lego WeDo 2.0. And then even more exciting is, the plan for this extensions library is to have it grow over time, for us to continue to add new extensions here, both software, hardware, and also to eventually open this up so that other people can create their own extensions or experimental or unofficial extensions, similar to what folks were doing with, if you're familiar with the ScratchX site. So let's try out one of these extensions. I think I will do text-to-speech.
Yes, let's try this one. It's exciting.
Yeah. So when I click on it, it adds a new category here, text-to-speech at the bottom, and gave me a few new blocks. So I'll pull out the speak one and just tap that to see what it does.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay.
Not bad. I want it to say, hello, Carmelo.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Carmelo.
Okay.
Okay.
Cute. So maybe I will, or actually, I don't know about.
Hello, Carmelo.
I don't think that's quite the right voice.
I think
for
we
the
need
dinosaur.
kind of like a more kind of
baritone,
like baritone,
yeah.
dark voice. Let's see what are the options here.
Yeah. So there's this other block, set voice to, and I can change the voice. So let's see what tenor does.
Hello, Carmelo.
Okay, that looks like more of a dinosaur.
There's a giant.
Hello, Carmelo.
This is perfect for a space dinosaur, I guess.
There we go, space dinosaur, and maybe I'll just put it at the end there, so it'll also meow.
Oh.
Hello, Carmelo.
Wow,
all right,
that's
nice.
Well. Actually, I was like, as I was like looking, you like thinking of removing the meow. I thought that the new kind of like cool feature of Scratch 3.0 is that I could remove one block just by right-clicking and saying delete block.
Oh,
so
cool.
Normally what happens is that I should like kind of remove this and then like take this out and everything. And now I can just click here and say delete block. And there we go. Like the rest of the stack is there. Yeah. Let's see if it works actually.
Hello, Carmelo.
Cool.
Perfect.
But I think this project inspires me like to try another extension, because now the dinosaur is speaking in English.
Yep.
But who knows how many other languages we can make dinosaurs speak if we use the translate extension.
And you can add multiple extensions to one project. You can combine them in interesting ways.
Cool. So I click on this and we still have text-to-speech, but we also have translate. So whatever I put inside this one, I'm gonna use like hello Champika. So if I click on this, I will have like Zdravo, I guess it's in Slovenian, but there's so many languages we can play with. I don't know, let me try, okay, I'm gonna use Italian just because it's the language that I know. And it should say ciao, so ciao Champika. Let's see if it works. So
and so you're gonna make it speak.
Yeah, I put it in the
combine them together.
speak. Let's see if it works.
Chauchampika.
Wow,
Yeah, and we can try.
Italian space dinosaur.
Exactly, can be like Icelandic, everything.
Hello, Champika.
Oh, it's hello. Wow, that's so
Okay.
interesting.
I don't know
So,
if that, it might just be, there's also, this is coming from Google Translate, and the translations are not always perfect. So
okay,
sometimes they're not quite accurate, but they're pretty good.
we can experiment,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure they will improve over time.
Yeah, and I think actually one other thing that I'll just note that I like about this extension is you also have this block that is the language block that lets you basically set it to the language of the person who is watching your project or playing your project. So you know, we did Italian, Carmela Italian, but you could put this language block in there, and then, you know, regardless of who's playing the project, it'll automatically translate the text to the language of that person, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
Great. So that's, I think maybe we'll pass it over to Natalie to talk a little bit about all the things we're doing to make the sort of getting started experience with Scratch better, and some of the resources we've been working on. We'll stop sharing our screen, and let's see if we.
Okay, then I'm going to start sharing my screen. So. Yes. Can you see? Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
We see you.
You see Scratch?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
we see Scratch.
Okay.
The audio is not perfect. Maybe like talking slowly will help.
Okay. One thing I wanted to start by saying a couple of things that I'm very excited about in 3.0. And one of them is that now the tabs, you can see there's an icon on them. So if I'm wondering where do I add sounds, there's a little speaker here, so that makes it more obvious. And how do I get back to my code? I see that there's blocks on this tab, or how do I draw there? So those are little cues that I think we've seen help a lot for people to navigate. Another thing is when I can see for any of my sprites what its X and Y location is, which helps us learn about what X and Y are. There's little signifiers that show X is across, Y is up and down on the screen. Another thing, there's some new features in the blocks. In the point and direction block, it used to be text, but now if you click in there, you can actually just show which direction do I want it to point, and it'll change. So I think that goes a long way in learning about the different directions in Scratch, and just having a really easy way to figure out what direction you want something to point in. We also have a few new blocks in the palette. One that I know we're excited about is this gliding to, well, you can glide to a random position, but you can also glide to another sprite. So if I want to choose a sprite, and I can search now. So if I want to search for the, let's say we're looking for a ball, and I can take the ball, and if I want the cat to go to the ball, I can just glide to, and I can glide over to the ball, and then when I click it, it'll go there, right to the where the ball is. So you can see how this might make it easier for a lot of animations and things that you want to do. One other thing that I'll show is that in the paint editor, it makes it easier to say, like if I'm on the bear, you can see which one I'm on there. If I go into the costumes, if I want to copy part of it, we were never able to do this. If I want to copy this head, I can copy here and then either paste it into another one. If I want that kind of expression here, I can then paste, and it'll go exactly where you want it. So, and we still have undo if you don't want it, but this copy and paste feature for animations makes it a lot easier. Something that we've been working on a lot is new ways to help people get started. And we've been creating a lot more and making visible the tutorials. So at the top, you'll see there's a button that says tutorials with a little light bulb to help draw it out. And when you click on that, there's a lot of different tutorials that we have in. To get started, there's now a get started one that's really obvious here. When you click on it, you'll see, and there's a video. And the exciting thing about the video is that it's now posted on Scratch so that you don't have to worry about it being on YouTube and being blocked. The videos are hosted, and they'll be able to set the bandwidth according to how fast your connection is. So you can see
With
a little
Scratch,
video
you can make
about getting started. So you can watch that. And then you can, after that, see, okay, step by step, how would I do that? And there's a series of little animated GIFs that show you, okay, first, let's do this. So it's a way right there in the editor to get started. And a new feature is that you can move that if you want to move that to wherever you want it. And if you close it, you can just always go back and get your tutorials again. Some of the themes, we have some new themes in here, like making a clicker game, make a chase game. And any of these, if you go in, say the make music one, it'll have a video that shows you.
You can use Scratch to make music. Create a song, make a beat, or anything else you can imagine. To get started, pick a sprite.
So
Pick this.
it'll go through, how do you get started? And then again, if you want to see it step by step, you click the arrow. It'll show you, okay, here's how you can add an instrument. Here's that script, and then here's more things you can do. So it walks you through and gives you ideas. And we really focused on making things that aren't too complex, but really get you started trying things out within a theme and a variety of different themes. And we'll be continuing to add. And our volunteer translators are in the process of translating these. And if you're interested in that, you can let us know if you want to contribute to that effort. We also have some that I just show like how do I do something like a lot of common questions we get. Like how would I record a sound? Or how do I make something hide and show? How do I make something change size? That's a very popular one. So there's a little video that goes through and really just shows you some of the simple ways to do that, and then really encourages you to try it out. So we're really excited to have new ways like this to show how do you get started, and as we hear from different questions that come up, continuing to add to these. We can talk more about it if you have questions and suggestions about that. Another thing that I wanted to show you is just in the upcoming, let's see, hour of code. I wonder if I should switch to that. I'll go ahead and do that. Let's see. So there's all those video tutorials. Actually, no, I want to first show you, in addition to those tutorials there, we have, for those who aren't familiar, if you go to the Scratch site, there's the tips page. And if you go to the tips page, there's other resources. And we're going to be updating this. Right now they're on 2.0, but the updated ones will have all the 3.0 resources, including downloading the activity cards or the coding cards, where you can print out versions of all of the tutorials to try out and have them, the printed cards. You can either order them or just print them out and download them. So those will all be available on that page and available for translation as well. So all of that's available in the upcoming month in December. For those who celebrate, the CS Ed Week or the Hour of Code is December 3rd through 9th this year here. And we're featuring a couple of the new Scratch 3 tutorials, and those are available here. There's one that uses that feature that you just saw Champika and Carmelo showing, the how to create animations that talk using the text-to-speech, and there's a
With
video
Scratch,
that introduces
you can make
that.
characters talk out loud. Perform a song.
I'm the ghost track.
And then again, it'll show you step by step how can you do that. So there's that one, the creating animations that talk, and then there's also, we're collaborating with Cartoon Network to make an adventure game. So it'll load that in. So those are our two new tutorials in Scratch 3. There's also, if you're already used to using the ones in 2.0, like those ones, because it's still in beta, you'll need to save the project. If you want to go back to the Scratch 2 ones, those are still available. Animated Name, Make Music, Pong Game, those are still available. And they're all, if you go to the Hour of Code, they're being featured on that page, the Hour of Code page under the activities. You'll see the animated adventure game, and also on that page is our creating animations that talk. There's also some other activities that you'll find on this page that use Scratch too, the current version of Scratch. I think those are most of the things, and we can always come back if I skip something or if you have a question or suggestion.
All right. And all right, are we back to this? Can you guys hear us okay?
I guess now they are muted. But people should be able to hear us.
So one other thing I'll just mention in terms of resources, you know, something that makes the Scratch community great is, or something that makes Scratch great, I think, is the community around it, both the Scratchers, the educators, but also the resource developers. There's so many resources, like way more than we actually know about probably, that have been developed around Scratch. And we know that lots of people use the things that we create, but also use things that have been created by other folks. And so we've been working with a few resource developers to help them update their resources in time for the launch. So if you're familiar with Scratch Ed and their creative computing guide, they will have, or they're working on an updated version for Scratch 3.0 that should be available around the launch. We've been working with Google CS First to get all of their videos and content updated for January 2nd. And then we've also been working with the Raspberry Pi Foundation to update all of their Scratch content for their code clubs. And I will just quickly share the links to all of those. So this is sort of the links to the Scratch Ed Creative Computing Guide, CS First, and then Code Club. And then one other thing, we know that there's lots and lots of other folks who are developing resources. And so if you are a resource developer and you want to join our resource developer mailing list, we hope to use it as a way to sort of share updates with folks. We encourage people to sort of wait until the launch and then start updating their resources then, just when things have become stable. But you can join our mailing list by going to this URL at bit.ly/scratch-resource-developers and sign up for our mailing list there. So, and I think we're going to post all of these links in the chat and probably Twitter.
He's doing just
okay. Thank
right
you,
now.
Nee. I will stop sharing then. Okay, and so I think that covers pretty much. Oh, so the one last thing that I think we'll mention before we jump into Q&A is that, so just reiterating the timeline for the launch, January 2nd. When that happens, when you go to scratch.mit.edu, you'll see the new editor. It will no longer be the Scratch 2.0 editor, but you will still be able to access a standalone version of the Scratch 2 editor, as well as the Scratch 1.4 editor if you go to scratch.mit.edu/downloads. So if you do have resources that are dependent on those versions, you can still use an offline version or a standalone version that will continue to support. And again, all your projects should continue to work. That's a high priority for us. the community, you won't see changes to the community. We'll see some updates to the look and feel of the project page. And one thing that we're working on with the project page is improving UI for that so it works well on phones. Because one thing that's also new about Scratch 3.0 is you'll be able to play your projects on phones. And that's an experience we're continuing to sort of improve and work on, but you should be able to browse and play projects on your phones in addition to creating on tablets. And also on January 2nd, we'll have offline versions ready for Windows and Mac. And then soon after that, later in 2019, we'll have an offline version for Chromebooks, which is very exciting. We hadn't had that in the past, and it's something we get asked about a lot. And you should be able to use the web version in any modern browser. So you should be able to use it on a tablet in a browser, but we also will be launching standalone versions for Android and iOS that will come later in 2019. Okay, I think that covers all the millions of details that I wanted to share about the launch, but I think maybe we'll turn it over to questions now. And I'm sure some of those things, if any of that wasn't clear, we can also just go over them or talk more about them in this Q&A.
Great. So hi, everybody. Just to reiterate, if you have any questions, you can tweet at us using the hashtag Scratch3Webinar. If you don't have Twitter, you can also ask questions using the link that we dropped into the YouTube chat, pollev.com/scratch team. You can also ask directly into the YouTube chat if that's more convenient for you. But I think I'll start with some easy questions for the team, and then we'll go into the more specific ones. So people are curious about the offline version, and maybe we can share again when the offline version will be available. And also, if you currently have the 2.0 editor, will you have to update? Can you hang on to the editor for your offline version? So I think maybe Natalie or Champika, you could take that one.
Champika, on you go ahead.
Okay, so on January 2nd, we will have offline versions available for Windows and Mac that you'll be able to download. Later in the year, there will be an offline version for Chromebook. And then if you're using an offline version of Scratch 2.0, you can delete, if you want, you can keep using that if you want to keep using that, or you can download the new offline version. You can go to scratch.mit.edu/download and download a new version, the Scratch 3.0 version, but it won't affect if you're using 2.0 offline, nothing will change unless you decide to delete it and download the new version.
If you're like me, like having all flavors, the original,
Yeah.
and 2 and 3, depending what you're feeling like, or
And we will continue to support, we'll keep a downloadable version of 2.0 up. We plan to keep it up for a long time. We have no plans to take that down, but we won't be actively developing or adding things to it.
Great. So we have a question here about what browsers will be supported. So questions about various browsers like Opera or Chrome.
Sure. So you can actually get the entire, so we generally say any modern browser, but we have the definitive list. If you go to scratch.mit.edu /3AQ, I'll put up that URL right now. But if you go there, you can see the list of supported browsers. And we'll continue to update that in case anything changes. But the list that you see there is what we're committing to support.
Yeah,
and
she
posted it into the chat.
Okay, so a question about the history of 3.0. When did development start? So how long has the team been working on Scratch 3.0?
I think Natalie.
I'm trying to think. You said a few years. I guess it depends, but it has been a while in development and trying to figure out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, depending on when you decide this, because I think even before I left the team and came back, but before I left, that was 2014. There was already some experiments being done around UIs for touch devices and things like that. So that, I don't think we were calling it Scratch 3.0 at that time, but
yeah. But we were
there's
experimenting with going out of Flash and making it more mobile. So we're just so excited that we're really getting to that point where people can run it on various mobile devices.
I think we had Tim Mickle, who was working on an HTML5 player years ago.
That's true.
I've been like working for 3 years now in the team, and I'm still amazed of the amount of like thought and how thoughtful is the team in really like every design choice in Scratch. It's really thought very deeply. So I really enjoy, and I think this is something that makes Scratch such a great a place to be and tool to use.
So folks are really excited about what we kind of tease them with regarding the sound editor. So maybe one of you could talk about what's new and what else there is to be excited about when it comes to sound.
Should I take that one?
Sure, either way. Yeah, you could go ahead.
Okay. Well, actually, maybe we can both say what we or add some things to it. I think so. The sound editor, there's lots of sort of effects that we showed a couple of them, like the robot and the echo, the fact that you can reverse and make things softer and louder. I know one thing that we're missing from 2.0 that folks are asking about is sort of editing parts of a sound, and I know that's something that's useful for lots of types of projects that rely heavily on music and sound. And so that is something we plan to add back in. It won't be ready for the launch, but we're figuring out how to add that back in or support that. And then
there's also, oh, go ahead.
I think I know what you're gonna say. So you should.
You go ahead.
Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe this is. I was just gonna say. Also, the sound library, we've added new sounds to the sound library, and when you're in the sound library, you can kind of scroll through and very easily, as you sort of mouse over the thumbnails, you can get a preview of the sound, which is sometimes overwhelming, but also kind of useful in terms of like, quickly finding a sound you're looking for.
I was also going to say there's a new block where you can set the pitch. And that's a really great thing to play around with, where you can make something go higher, 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 higher each time you repeat, or lower, lower, lower. And then also you can pan from left to right. So if you're wearing earphones or if you have speakers, you can play around with, it sounds like a sprite's going from here to there. So there's a variety of new features.
And actually, one other thing, I'm not a very musical person, so I don't know, I won't be able to explain this very well, but I know Eric Rosenbaum, who's working on a lot of the music and sound features, was showing me sort of a comparison of some of the projects that are music projects in 2.0 that are using notes and playing music. When you play them in 2.0 versus in 3.0, the timing and the sound is much better. So if you have projects like that in 2.0, I recommend trying them out in 3.0. You should notice an improvement.
Awesome. We have, I think, a Scratcher joining us who says they're going to spend a week at school just messing around with the sound editor. So sounds like people are excited. Let's see here. Will I still be able to right click and pull up help for a block? Or what kind of resources and help will be available in the editor for newcomers or people getting familiar with the editor?
It's really interesting to hear people, because we've also been told, oh, I don't know if people use that feature, but we have been hearing from more people that ability to call a block. We think when we launch, we'll have a reference guide, which we didn't have for 2.0, where you can see all the blocks. So it would be like a PDF where you could just look through and see every block and how it's used. But eventually we would like to find a way to bring that back in, since we've been hearing from you, some of you, that you do use that feature of being able to explore blocks and see how they're used right within the editor. So we are planning to add that.
Great. So this seems to be a popular question today. People are curious about the Set Costume Center feature, and maybe whether or not that will be available. If not, how will animations kind of be made like seamless and easy in 3.0?
So I guess that's one thing. That's another one of those where we felt like the design originally was kind of like, what does this do and what is it doing? But some of you figured out, yeah, that was a useful thing to have. Right now, you can reposition your sprite where you want it to set the center because it's right there. There's a little mark, you know, there. But I think it's being reconsidered since we're hearing from a lot of people. This copy and paste thing that I said, that is a way now if you can copy from any like whole sprite or subset, and when you paste it, it will be exactly where you want it. And that can help as well with making animations. But again, I think the team is reconsidering, and I know Carmela was feeling strongly about that too. No, people do want that, even though it's a pretty obscure feature. But for those who've used it, they're finding it useful.
Great. So a follow-up to the kind of tips and help that might be available. Will teachers still be able to add comments, or will you still be able to add comments within projects in the editor?
Yes.
Great. So Kathleen is going to be happy about that. Let's see here. Maybe
so yeah, those who don't know, you can like right-click or control-click on a block, and one of the menu options, besides delete a block, is to add a comment, and it works even nicer maybe than in 2.0 to add comments to your projects.
Okay, so I'm going to jump to some questions about extensions. When will the 3.0 microbit extension be supported on Chrome?
Chrome OS.
On Chrome OS. So that will have to wait. So, but also, so that's, I think tied to that, there's a question around just extensions on like tablets as well. And so at the launch, you won't be able to use some of those hardware extensions or any of those hardware extensions with tablets or Chromebooks until we have the standalone version of Scratch on Chromebooks, Android, and iOS. And again, we hope to have those later in 2019. But you will be able to use Scratch 3.0 and the software extensions, but the hardware extensions will depend on the standalone version.
Okay, awesome. And maybe we could share what extensions actually will be available in January come launch.
So anything that you see in the beta extension library right now, we will have at launch on January 2nd. So to reiterate what's there, you have the music extension, the pen extension, the video sensing extension, text-to-speech, translate, microbit, Lego Mindstorms EV3, and then Lego We Do 2.0.
Good memory.
Yeah, all from it. Just I've looked at that library lots of times. But as I said, you know, the thing that we're most excited about with the extension library is it's a place that we want to continue to add things to grow sort of, you know, all the type, like expand the types of things you can make with Scratch. And so already we have other extensions that are in the works. They won't be ready, unfortunately, exactly for January 2nd, but that's something that we'll just sort of continue to add to on a regular basis over time.
Great. Let's see here. We do have a question that's come up twice tonight about our privacy policy and data collection of students. So maybe we could just share like any updates from the team or how we've been thinking about privacy moving forward.
So we updated our terms, our privacy and our terms of service with the sort of along with all of the sort of GDPR stuff that happened. And I know we get a lot of questions from schools asking us if we could sign sort of the I'm forgetting the term for this, but the release, because, you know, we've been so busy with the launch, there's a lot that we're doing just to get ready for the launch, but that's high on our list of like figuring out what we need to do to best support schools and ensure that they can use Scratch. And of course, everything, if you can go through and look at our, we could put up links also in the chat, maybe to our privacy policy and our terms of service. But we have options in there, suggestions in there for, if the online version doesn't make sense for your school, like the offline version actually doesn't gather any data or anything like that. So that might be a better option for depending on the setup or what you're looking for.
Great.
We would add to that, Natalie.
No, I think that was
okay. So we're in our final 9 minutes of the webinar, which went by super quickly. So I narrowed it down to my 3 kind of favorite questions of the night. The first, which I think we can all take a turn answering, is what is your favorite feature yet? And I'm gonna go first so no one takes mine, which is I love our new Sprite library especially, but I love how you can hover and see all of the costumes that are part of a Sprite now. It actually, I think, is really helpful in imagining what you want to create, because sometimes seeing that static bear doesn't really inspire anything that seeing the different costumes does.
Carmelo, do you want to go? I'm still thinking.
Yes. One of my favorite is something that used to be on the very old Scratch 1.4 editor, and it's the surprise sprite, and also like surprise backdrop, surprise sound. I really love when I am like I don't have an idea of what I want to do with Scratch. Just like having a couple of random sprites, it really helps me kind of like generate a story. So that's my favorite feature.
Okay, this is such a great question for me. I'm like really bad at making choices, but I think I'm really excited for the fact that you'll be able to play projects on your phone. Again, it's a work in progress, and there's still lots we need to do to improve that. But just the promise of that is exciting to me.
I think the way that the extensions are designed so you can really focus on a certain thing. So like video sensing was always there, but almost nobody noticed it. And now there's this really nice button. If you add an extension, you can see the video sensing, and you can make some really great projects. And we have in the tutorial window a tutorial that shows you, it's not there, you'll see it very soon in the beta, video sensing choices and like how to do that. And we find it really engages kids. So even without any physical hardware that you buy, as long as you have some kind of a webcam either built in or attached, then you can have an interactivity with your body, with your project, and we have fun ways to get started with that.
Awesome. So this next question, I just love how it's worded. So what are the biggest small changes that Scratchers or educators, resource developers may not have noticed yet that you want to point out?
Yeah.
I actually think like a few of the things like perhaps Carmelo and I mentioned, maybe small things that people may not have noticed about the beta.
Yeah, there is something that, yeah, like Natalie showed a couple of them, you know, like deleting some block leads in the middle, gliding to random position. It's kind of a cool thing when you want a character in a game to move unpredictably. And there are so many other things that are kind of like hidden here and there. I don't want to unveil too much.
I mean, again, this is, you have to be, but a lot of you are like knowing that you can now like the going forward or backwards a layer. You used to only be able to go to front, but now you can decide how many layers up or back. And similarly, some things where you could only say backdrop name, but not number. So some of those things that you kind of wanted to do, if you're really into this, that you can now just makes more sense. I can do all of those things. If you look in your blocks and look closely at them, I think you'll be excited about what you can do in terms of like the switching the backdrop or finding out which backdrop name or number you're on.
Yeah.
So looking at those details, and that's what's so exciting for us is when we hear, well, some people are really missing that select a costume thing that most people never notice, but some people really did care about.
And I'm gonna throw in a plug for Speak Visually. Also Eric, who does the Scratch video updates. A feature that he keeps talking about is the fact that you can now delete a sprite by just right-clicking on it. So before, you kind of had to drag the block away, but now you can right-click and just delete the block directly from the stage.
And maybe another thing that I would suggest people to try is the new color picker. So when you want to select, when touching a certain color, I think it's like there was a lot of improvement in that. So it seems like a small thing, but like it makes a big difference. You should try that.
I think probably just to summarize, there's lots of these big, small changes or small, big, small changes. And the best way, like as you start creating projects in Scratch, you'll probably like discover more of them, or start creating projects in the Scratch 3.0 beta. You'll see and discover more of them. So definitely get in there and start like trying out the beta.
So I want to end on a question from a Scratcher. And of course, I know CB and other members of the community will of course be communicating with Scratchers about the launch and what to expect with 3.0. But this Scratcher wants to know, what would you like to see on the Scratch Wiki to help other Scratchers in the transition to Scratch 3.0 from 2.0? So maybe some like big takeaways or things that they can make sure to communicate.
I do think some of these new features that people might not notice, there's things around transparency or in the paint editor. So really highlighting, here's some new things to try that people wouldn't otherwise notice. And maybe some of the differences. So like, especially in the meantime, if there isn't a way to change Costume Center the way you used to, what are some other workarounds like I know is in the Scratch Wiki? So I think those would be really helpful to have there that we could point people to.
And then reassuring everyone that your projects will continue to work in Scratch 3.0 and that the beta right now is not connected to the community, but it will, we're not getting rid of the community, we'll connect to the community on January 2nd.
And maybe like another thing that I keep thinking about is like when we host a workshop, when I help like children, people making Scratch project, we say that a Scratch project is never finished, right? Like there's always something that you can change, you can add, and the same like holds true for Scratch. Like we're focusing on what is going to happen on a very specific date of the launch on January 2nd, but it doesn't mean the Scratch will stay exactly how you see it on January 2nd. We love to hear your feedback. We love to see how people are using Scratch and keeping improving, because after Scratch 3.0, I guess there will be Scratch 4, 5, who knows? So it's going to keep evolving. So your contribution and your advice and suggestions from Scratchers, it's so very, very precious.
And that's all we have.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining in, and thanks to the Scratch team folks who joined this one with us.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
Bye. Scratch on.
Scratch on.